don't worry. God's going to be there. I've got faith. Everything's going to be fine.
And learned that principle in my life. And that's the hardest thing I think for us to let go of is our money.
Let's understand what the bigger picture of what you're trying to accomplish. What that particular strategy you were talking about, here's the pros to it, here's the cons to it.
All right, today I'm pumped because one of the things I get blessed with in my life, guys, is I go to probably, in my opinion, the best church in the entire world, and I'm surrounded by the most incredible people. I have role models, I have mentors, I have people I can look at, I can see fruit in their life and the way that they live their life and be like, I want to be near you. I want to be in proximity to you. And the guest that I have today, he lives up to everything that I just said. His name is Greg Banner. He is the CEO of Asset Preservation Strategy. But more than that, Greg, you're an amazing husband. You're an amazing man. You're a guy that always has joy every time I talk to you. And it's funny because you know guys like Greg and you're like, man, this guy's really successful. But he's a guy that every time you talk to him brings the joy of the Lord. So Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Man, well, we're pumped to have you. We're going to have some things I want to dive into today as we were preparing before the show. And I know you have some gold. So one of the things that I think would be really cool to start off, and I kind of like to do this anyways, is what do you, Greg Banner, value most in life?
For me, over the last 5 or 6 years, it's really been about finding my purpose and just figuring out what that was and what fulfills me. And it's just, even in the last couple of weeks, things are just going amazing right now. Yeah. It's just like, but it's a matter of it's not the stuff. It's not tangible. It's not having stuff or anything like that. It's about making a difference and coming out of some of these meetings and the impact you're having on people. It's like, that's what just really fills you. It's like, wow, I made a difference. Wow. It's like, that was a fantastic meeting. Come out, some of the people I'm working with on the team and stuff, that was amazing. I mean, we truly made a difference. And I don't mean financially. I mean, just the impact we're having on families, everything they're able to do beyond the numbers, beyond the financial and the tangible, impacts we're having on their families, the way they're doing things, the changes they're making in their lives. God's moving.
That's so good. So you mean that making money wasn't enough to fulfill your purpose?
I've got clients with millions and even billions of dollars that literally, I see the problems they have. Money, you always hear money doesn't solve things. The more money you have, the more problems you have. I don't care. I see it all the time. And that's been one of the things with me over my life. It's like, I'm very content with who I am, what I have. And that was a phase I went through. You go through this, wow, I want one of those, or I want what that had. I want to be them. I'm happy the way I am. I don't need more. I don't need the super fancy car. I don't need the whatever. Sure. Are they nice? Are they fun to drive sometimes? Yeah. I don't need one of those. I don't need the McMansion. My wife and I live in the same house we've had for 23 years. It was the first house we bought that we thought was going to be a flipper. We ended up fixing it up, and we liked the neighborhood and the place so much. We're still there. Yeah. I don't need a 5,000 square foot home or bigger. And I'm not running around, boy, I want that next house, or I want that. And we've said, you know what? We love our house. That's honestly, I don't see us ever buying another house. We're like, we'll never retire. We're always so active with stuff, but we'll probably stay in that house the rest of our lives. Yeah. It's not about the stuff. And it's also about, the other thing that's changed a lot is just the people, like you said, it's who do you surround yourself with? I don't care if it's people I'm doing work with. It's like a lot of the people I'm in the room with, I feel about that big too. And I like that. I want to surround myself with people who make me better, who make me grow. I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room. Yeah. I don't want to, and it's in people that make me better. And that's one of the things the last few years that we've focused on in terms of just who are we hanging out with? Are they the right people? And even, from an influence on our son and things like that. It's like, are we going to church? It's like, these are the people, just like you say, there's amazing people in our church. Yeah. And it's just, you talk about getting your juices flowing, seeing these people and talking to them and hearing what they're doing, and just seeing, not only hearing what they're doing, but hearing what's happening in and to their lives, the miracles, the healing, the things that happen that most people would say, well, that's not possible, or how it is, or that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, we see it and hear about it every day, every week.
On a weekly basis. It's like, we hear God stories on a weekly basis of things that people say, well, that's not possible.
Yeah.
Whether it's financial related, whether it's healing, whether it's, the number of people that I've touched, or God stories I've gotten back from people, especially from a financial standpoint, the people that I've got situations from people who had IRS problems, that the way it was resolved, CPAs and tax people are like, that's not possible. I'm like, no, it is possible. And that's the way it happened. And they're like, we've never heard of that. You mean you did it this way, and you did it totally not the way it was supposed to happen, but yet the IRS still gave you all that money back, things like that. But it's just amazing.
Well, it's because we operate with a power and an authority that everyone has access to, but very few people know they have access to or exercise that. So let's go there. This is great. I love the way the conversation's going. And guys, Greg's a powerhouse. He's one of the most humble guys I know, but he's a powerhouse. And he's around very influential people that do very well in the world. But Greg, your story's crazy. How the church changed your life, changed your wife's life. Like, can you take us back? You said it was 7 years ago when we were talking earlier, right?
I've been at the church for probably about 7 years. Yeah.
So tell us, who was Greg before then? What were you living like? What was important to you? Because you just showed us what I saw in you was a joy of contentment in your life. And being in the world of, I own a couple companies and I'm a young guy, right? So I'm young, I'm hungry, but I began to notice things. I was like, man, there's people in this world I'm in of entrepreneurship that are only pursuing more things. It's never enough. They're never content. They're always hungry. They want more money. They want the next nicest car, house, this, that. And they have this void and for me, I found the Holy Spirit. I found Jesus, and I only recently learned how to find contentment and be like, God, I'm so grateful with where I'm at. Like, if we backstepped a few steps, I'm still grateful. And I saw that on you, but you weren't always that way, were you?
It's funny you say this, because last week there was a message by Teresa Mack.
Oh, yeah.
About control. And at first I'm kind of like, oh, what is this? And it's like, wow. It made me think back in terms of before I found the church, or before I started to really get planted in the church. I'm a very detailed, it's like, when I go anywhere, I need it mapped out ahead of time. I need, what are we going to spend? Watching every nickel, every dime in terms of just very controlled. And, faith wasn't a thing. And I use this because the person who got me to come to the church the first time, I've helped him build and sell. We're on our 5th business right now.
Wow.
And for hundreds of millions of dollars. And this guy, he went through situations where it seems like as we're getting ready to sell businesses, things went down to the wire, and I'm like, look, the numbers don't work. You're going to run out of money, or you need to do this or that, financial type stuff. And he was always calm, and it's like, don't worry. God's going to be there. I've got faith. Everything's going to be fine. And the message that Teresa gave just talked about letting go of things and having faith. And by the time we got to the sale of his 3rd business, here we go again down that path. And I'm like, but I wasn't stressed about it. I mean, this is for his situation. It's like, I know it's going to happen. I know what's happening in his business in terms of he's doing some amazing kingdom-oriented things. And this is the devil's way to attack him and his business any way that he can. But it always works out. And by the 3rd time, I'm like, I'm not even worried about it, because I know it's going to work out. And it's given me even the situation. It's to loosen the reins, especially the last few years and when I say with my spending, in terms of I don't mean like spending wildly or anything like that. I'm not in control like I was in terms of, we're going on a trip and we need to stay at we can't stay here. That's way too much money. We should save money because it's always, for me, I want to make sure I have enough to retire on and all that. And giving, giving, that's another thing in my life from the church is I was not a charity, charity wasn't my thing. It's like my charity is me and my family. That's charity. Everyone, you give $25 here or there to the kid or whatever, but that was it for me. Church is just, wow, hearing and understanding, seeing how God's changed their lives and financially is by it truly is the more you give, the more you receive. Yeah. And it's just, and I don't even think of giving to me was always an expense. It's like, wow, $100, I could buy a nice dinner for that, or $500. Wow, what I could do with that, and thousands of dollars. And it's just like, I could buy a new car for what I gave. And it's just, now it's like, I don't even think of that. It's not, well, wait, I'm giving away X and there's all these things. I look at it now and it's like, I'm giving it away and it's going to come back to me 10 times.
Yeah.
I mean, I just completed a huge tithing and a Vision Builders donation just a few months ago. It was starting to worry me, the amount that we were giving. And it's like, well, maybe we'll just, things weren't happening the way I thought. Maybe we'll just wait a little longer. And there was someone prophesied over me and literally the morning he did that was something I was thinking about on the way to our men's prayer group in the mornings. And literally that morning, this person came up and prophesied over me and he's like, Greg, I have this vision. I see this. I don't know why, but this keeps coming to me. Oh my gosh. That's what I was thinking about the whole way driving there. I guess that's my sign that I'm supposed to complete this
Wow.
This contribution. And I did it. And now, I mean, I'm looking, this was a couple of months ago. Man, the last month, the number of clients and people that have been coming into my life and just out of the blue and the things happening, it's just like, wow.
Wait, you mean when you were obedient and you tithe and you went above and beyond and you gave an offering that God is abundantly blessing your life?
Baby.
Are you guys catching this? Because this isn't talked about a lot, right? Like money, the church, all of that. You're a money guy, and we both, we're Holy Spirit filled. So many people avoid this topic when it comes to it. But I want to dive all the way down the rabbit hole. I want to go all the way there, Greg. Tell us a really, truly, like, when you came in the church, you weren't this way. I mean, like you said, you were in control of everything, and, we're only spending this and we're only doing this. Now you're giving.
Yeah. I mean, when I came into the church, they used to pass a bucket around back before the COVID days.
Yeah.
And it was like, this is a pretty good message. I'll put $5 in that.
Yeah.
That was tithing. That was giving to me.
Yeah.
I mean, we've given 6 figures the last few years.
Yeah.
And I never thought I'd see the day I'd ever even give that much in my lifetime, let alone, in a year's time period. And now I literally think about, I get excited when I see what's possible. I get excited because, I mean, our church likes to take ground and buy buildings and things like this. I have a vision that I'm going to buy one of those buildings.
Come on.
That's going to be my contribution one of these days.
Wow.
I literally see that possibility happening. And you talk about big dreams, and we listen to the true powerhouse, Colin Hickenbottom and Melissa and those guys. I mean, that guy just drives me. I see the giving they do, and I love it. It's just like, do I want to be something like, that's what I want to be like.
Yeah,
I
same.
see what they're doing and their hearts and everything, and it's like, man, this is just amazing. And that's the type of stuff that gets excited to me. It's just like, I'll make an investment and some things out there that have huge potential, and I'm like, I'm not thinking about the car or the thing I can buy with that. I'm thinking about, boy, we could do some cool things from a charitable standpoint with that. And I get excited about that.
That's so good. Well, Greg, earlier before we launched the show, you talked to me about 3 phases of your life, and I believe you're in the 3rd one right now. Would you mind breaking that down, what those 3 phases were, what you learned in each one, and what they mean to you?
So for me, about a year after I was kind of planted in the church, the first year or so, I just kind of went through and it was like, wow, this is pretty cool, but I hadn't been to church in 35 years. So I was just kind of in this phase, well, it's interesting. And it was like, wow, this is okay. And but once I started going to church regularly and just the messages that were coming out of that were meant for me. And I started realizing, I went through this gratitude phase first. And it was just like, really just, it hit me how appreciative I was just of everything, how grateful I was about everything, my life, my business, my family, the people in my life and the things, and truly being able to make a difference.
Yeah.
And that phase, that was probably for, I don't know, maybe somewhere a year or two. And then all of a sudden, it was at an Emerge conference, Keith Craft spoke, and a pastor out of Elevate Life Church.
I think I was there.
Yeah, and he did a message basically about finding your purpose. And I'm trying to think, I can't think of the name of the book.
Was it
right
the
now.
last time he was there, or the time before?
No, this was probably about 2019 or 2020, something like that. It was pre-COVID. And he wrote a book called Your Divine or Your Unique Fingerprint.
Yeah.
And that was what his message was. And I actually got the book afterwards and over the next few months I read that, and it's kind of like, hey, what is it what's your 1%? What is it that's different about you that you can make a difference in and compared to everybody else? And I started thinking, it's like, wow, what is my purpose? It's like, my purpose is, over the last 30 years, I've built all these great relationships and knowledge and network and all this.
Yeah.
And it's like, my purpose is to make a difference in other people's lives. How can I make a difference? What can I do? And it's literally every day, what did I do to change someone's life today? It may be the smallest thing. It may be something big.
Yeah.
But it's like literally looking for opportunities and trying to make a difference and living life with a purpose. And it was just like, wow, that had a huge impact on me. And that went for several years. I was in that phase, and it's just been last year, this authority phase hit me. And it hit me because of someone who asked me to pray for a family member that was going through dialysis and kidney failure, and tied to some messages I'd seen were talking about authority. And it was like, I hear about all these people, and we see miracles all the time. People just healed. The doctors don't have explanations. No one, and we see that all the time. You kind of take it for granted. I'm like, that's really cool to hear all these people getting, but how does that affect me? Or how can I do that? And then there was one day, I remember one day at a men's prayer group where I was we break into groups of 3 and we pray for each other. And one of the guys said, I need prayer for my sister's going in and has this tumor and is supposed to go in in surgery in a few weeks, and the doctors want to remove it and all that. Pray for her. And we did. And I remember about a month later, the guy coming back and says, hey, I got this God story. A month ago when we were in our groups of 3 and the guy's praying for me or for my sister, well, she went in right before her surgery. They did this other scan and check, and the tumor was gone, and the doctors couldn't explain it, and she's healed.
Come on.
And I'm just like, wow, I had a part of that. My praying was like that big compared to the other guy, but I was like, I was involved in that. That's really cool. And that led me to start seeing opportunities and actively seeking when I hear about, people who need healing. And it led to someone else, that this other situation I was talking about with this person whose stepmom was, having kidney problems and all that, praying and talking through with her, well, what's, let's pray for, do you really believe that we can heal her through prayer? And this is a non-believer, a person I'd actually met came in for some business planning, stuff like that. But she knew I went to the church, and she knew, and it was kind of like, hey, would you pray for her? And it's one thing that I think a lot of people don't think about, because you hear people say that all the time. Hey, will you pray for someone? And oftentimes, and for me, it's like, oh yeah, of course I'll pray for them. and it used to be a couple Hail Marys or an Our Father or something back in the days before I really learned to pray at this church.
Yeah.
And I still pray about that big compared to, man, dude, you're such a prayer warrior. I love, and so many of the people in the church I just love. It's just amazing to hear people pray.
Yeah.
But it was a situation where I basically declared, I talked to some other people and I said, do we really have the authority to do this? Can I do this? And I really believed it's like, we can heal this person, and prayed for her. And about a week later, I get a call, and it's like, you're not going to believe what's happened. She's, been going on dialysis. Things were really bad. She'd been there for like a year, no kidneys or anything. The day that I prayed over her with this person, they found a kidney for her.
Wow.
And had since then had the kidney replaced, back fully good health.
Come on.
And most people would say, oh, that was just a coincidence and stuff. But it's like, I've seen too many coincidences to know it's not a coincidence. And that really was like, wow, and I've had a few situations now where I understand the power of prayer and that God's granted us this authority to work through us. And for me, it's about, I want to be one of those people, a vessel that he works through to perform miracles. I don't care if it's healing miracles. For me, I see a lot of financial miracles to people, because when I'm teaching and I talk about, I've seen the number of people, especially real estate. I do a lot of real estate stuff, love and think it's a great asset for people. But I talk to a lot of people who are just buying their first home and things like that. And a couple years ago, I started bringing just little keys, and I don't remember if you were part of one of those groups that got one of those keys or not, but so I'll buy 200 blank keys at a time, and you can go to Home Depot or whatever, get the key with the funny picture on it or whatever, the crazy key, and I'll tell people, and I'll pass these out to people. I'll say, who's praying for a house or investment property or something, and I'll pass these out to people, and I say, I want you to put this on your keychain, this crazy picture key, and every time you grab your keys in the morning, I want you to pray for that house. And the number of stories, I bet you once a month, I get some kind of post, a call, or something from someone that says, you wouldn't believe what happened. Wow. We got the house. There were 10 over-ask offers, and we got the house for $50,000 underneath, out of those 10, we got it for less than all these other people. Or interest rates were going to be, 6%, and we got it for 4%. It's the number of situations.
God story after God story after God story.
It's amazing, and it is really cool. I mean, it's really just out of the blue. That's the kind of stuff. It's just like out of the blue. It's like there was a post from someone and someone in the church that moved to Texas, and they posted a picture. They said, we just closed on our new house, and we're trading in this key. They had a picture of the key I gave them for our new key in Texas. And this was a post. It wasn't to me specifically. It's like there was this financial planner that spoke at our event, and we ended up getting this house, and this was a situation, and we should have never got it, and we did. And it was just stuff like that is just amazing to hear.
Come on. So you went from this gratitude, purpose, authority. You began to see all of these miracles. You're seeing them now. You're living that now. And you're even, wait, God, you can use me like that? You can work through me as a conduit to see these miracles happen. To the person that's listening right now to the podcast, and they're a little bit skeptical, and they're a little bit like, man, Greg, I've grown up in a Catholic church, and I've never seen a miracle. And I don't know, that just sounds made up. What would you say to that person?
I say to people, when I say try it, and what I mean by that is I've got, for example, I've got a client in Texas who lives pretty far out, doesn't go to church, believes in God, reads the Bible and stuff like that, doesn't tithe or anything like that. But he's like, God, I wish we talk, and he hears stories from me. He's like, God, I wish we had a church like that. And he started watching messages, because our church posts messages online.
Yeah.
He's like, I started watching those messages. These guys are amazing. And over the last couple of months, he's like, my routine is I get up at 5 a.m. every day now, and I'll usually read the Bible a little bit. Then I'll watch one of those messages, and I'll force myself to watch it, because every time I don't want to watch something, I'll watch it and I'll pick up, oh, like, wow, that was amazing. I didn't expect that. It's like tithing. I tell people, you know what? Just try it. I don't care if you give $50. I don't care if you give $100, whatever. I said, I want you to try and give a little bit and see what happens. Watch to see what happens in your life. That's all I can say.
It's one of the only things he says, the testament. Yeah, and I've definitely, learned that principle in my life, and that's the hardest thing I think for us to let go of is our money, because we put so much value and so much emphasis on that. When you truly understand, actually, it's not even yours, actually. Like, God just flowing that through your life. But when you're willing to honor and bring your first fruits to him, I mean, you even look back to Cain and Abel, like God told them to bring their best, and from the very beginning of time of mankind, everything that we had that was ours is actually his. And all he asked was like, hey, bring me your best fruit, bring me the best of this, bring me your first 10%. And then you and I know that offerings go above and beyond that, right? And we've seen the blessing of that, and we've seen that, overflow into our lives. I think so many people wrestle with that. For me too, I like knowing that money never has control of me.
Yes.
There's something about just like when you give, there's this release of like, Mammon, you're not in charge of my life. I'm in charge of my life through God. And this, because Mammon, the spirit of greed and wealth will latch onto you and torment you for the rest of your entire life. And it's like every time you give, to me, it's like almost putting Mammon in check. Like, hey, I'm just reminding you, you're not in control here.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we started talking about originally. It was just like, it's not my money. Yeah. I don't even think when I give, it's not like, wow, I just gave X amount or whatever. Now, what I will say is, like I was talking about a few months ago giving, it's like, hey, things were starting to get a little tight. When I've given in the past, I gave from savings, so to speak. I gave from excess that wasn't going to make a difference in my life. But recently it's like, hey, I've had some other expenses. I actually just completed a big purchase of a business and things like that. And it's like, things are pretty tight. I don't have a lot of buffer. I'm used to having a big buffer, so to speak.
Yeah.
And do I really want to do this now? Or, if I do it in 6 months, or part of it was, I'll just wait till I see something come in and then I'll give it. And it was that prophesying by someone that said, okay, this is and some of that is, I said, God, give me a sign. If I'm supposed to do this, give me a sign. And I got that sign smack in the face that morning. I said, okay, let's make this. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And didn't even question it. Didn't even think about it afterwards in terms of it's just like, it's going to be fine. It's that faith. It's having faith, releasing things. And I don't remember if this was in the message this weekend or something, but someone was talking about the idea of, hey, look at the birds, look at the animals out. They don't store things up for the most part. You go out and you hunt and seek, you get your food every day, and in life, it's always there. It's always provided. And it's that, and part of that is keeping your money working for you. And that's one of the conversations I've been having with some people doing some cool investment things. It's not just sitting there having your money not work for you.
Yeah.
It's putting your money out there to work for you where it makes a difference and has an impact.
Yeah.
So it's not only working, it's actually in society. Maybe it's in a piece of real estate that's generating jobs, that's generating income, that's benefiting the community, that's doing other things, rather than just, I bought some gold bars and they're sitting in my safe.
Yeah.
And are not doing anything to contribute. I've been doing some reading and talking to some people talking about this, the biblical principles of money and how society and the economy was meant to work in God's eyes. And looking back to what the Israelites, how things were back in those days, when it talks about tithing and everything like that, it breaks down, the Bible, it breaks down how things used to be. it used to be there was a festival, a jubilee. I think it's every 7 years.
Yeah.
And your family, you were supposed to spend 10% of your income to pick up and spend 10% of your income to travel to this jubilee and spend that money there, to put it back into the society to benefit the people that prepared the food there. You didn't take stuff with you. You just left, you went, you paid for your hotel there, you paid for your food, whatever you had left, you didn't bring stuff back. You spent it all. And that benefited the society. The workers there weren't the extreme poor, because people would be benefited through that. And it's just really interesting, this cycle, and as I'm hearing and learning more about this through some people putting some things together related to this, it's like, this is really interesting, because versus just buying this thing and having it not a productive asset, it's like that doesn't help people. That it's almost like the idea of, hey, benefiting your local, spend locally, rather than buying something on Amazon or going to, the big national chain or something like that. If you have the opportunity,
right,
tip a little bit more, benefit the people, or go buy it at the local store, even though you might pay a little bit more. That's going to benefit the community. It's going to and it's going to just keep the trend going in terms of keep things going.
Yeah, and it's an abundant world when you do that, right? Like every time you're not greedy and you let it flow and you give with that servant's heart. Even like you talked about, even like tipping stuff. I've always been a big giver. Greg, everything in my life, there's times like I could tell you a story of 4 years ago. I was in San Diego and I was launching this business and I was in debt. And man, I had credit cards. Like I was all in on my business, right? Trying to build this dream. And I had $300 to my name. And I'm downtown San Diego. I'm looking at possibly moving here. And we were launching this new business out of my friend's place down in San Diego. And I got like $200 in my bank account, like $208 and some change. That's all I have to my name. And a $100 bill tucked in, I carry around in, my wallet. And this homeless guy comes up to us, and I don't really normally actually give money to the homeless. I'll buy him meals or clothes or this or that, because I know a lot of times used for drugs, right? But this guy comes up and I'm having a kingdom conversation with my brother, and I remember looking at him and I was like, well, can I pray for you? So I began to pray for this guy, and I lay hands on him, and my friend lays hands on him. And we get done, and I think his name was Larry, and Larry's like, can I pray for you? And I've never had that before, right? Yeah. So this guy puts his hand on me and starts praying for me, Greg, for like 9-10 minutes, goes after it.
Wow.
And in that moment, Holy Spirit hits me, and I get this like Holy Spirit prompting that's like, you're going to bless that man. I need you to take that $100 bill out of there, and I need you to give it to him. And I'm just like wrestling with God right now. I'm like, God, I got like $300 to my name. San Diego ain't cheap. You could spend that on a meal here. I still got to get back to Michigan. And all these excuses, right? And God says, do you trust me? And I'm like, I trust you. He's like, then give it to him. So we get done. This guy gets done praying. And I was like, hey, man, I just want to bless you, right? And he takes it. He doesn't look at it. He walks away. And like 5 minutes later, he must have walked 2 blocks. He comes back just weeping and crying, saying, thank you so much. He's like, because of you, I'm going to have a blanket tonight. I'm going to have food tonight. And I'm just like, oh my God, like it was the best feeling in the world, right?
Yeah, you talk about being filled.
But wait, I got a better part. It gets better, right? So we launched this business, and 1 week later, I made $23,000 in 1 week. And that's been a continuous story in my life where I've been up to the wall more times as a financial planner. You would be like, Cody, we need to talk about this, bud, because I could probably learn some things from you. We're going to get there. But I've had my back against the wall multiple times in moments of, God, I'm just going to trust you. And a lot of times there's a giving heart involved in that. And then God blesses. And I'm like, oh my God, God. At this point, Greg, if God told me to give you every dollar I had, I would give it to you. Because at this point, there's nothing anyone in the world can say that will take away the belief that I have in God and what he'll do in and through my life. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that story.
Yeah, no, that's well, and that brings back, and there's a couple in this church, and I'm not going to say their name, but who a couple of years ago, God told them sell their house. They sold their house, moved into a rental, gave that money to the church. The way they've been blessed is just amazing. I mean, they've got this beautiful house, huge acres in Rancho Santa Fe type stuff. But that couple, just seeing that and talking to them, I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. I mean, I say that, and it's just like, you talk about faith, and they're very successful people. And it's just like, but you talk, it just, that's the type of stuff it's like that just touches me. It's just like, I tear up right now just thinking about that. It's like, talk about giving everything. And it's amazing, those stories and the fulfillment. You can't, when I say you can't buy fulfillment, there's nothing we can do. You're going to buy, you're going to experience or whatever that's going to fulfill you like something like that.
So true. Well, Greg, I got about another 15 minutes with you. You are great at building wealth and educating around that and speaking into that. And I've seen you speak on it. You know, I believe that as Christians, we are also called to finance the kingdom. I believe that there is a commission. And I believe some people have a calling to give their entire life to ministry. Mm-hmm. Some people, it's like they're going to be a pastor, they're going to be all in serving the church. Maybe they don't make a lot of money, but they're building the church. They're saving souls. I also believe some people are called to be kings. And I believe that kings go and we fight battles, we take territory, and we bring the wealth to finance the church and to build the kingdom. And sometimes you're called to do both. In many ways, you really should do both. Even if you are a king, you should still be having some kind of ministry through your business. But in that, you still got to build wealth. You're not a king if you don't have a kingdom.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't have dominion over anything, you're not a king. And just like you, I want to write checks that buy the whole building for my church one day. I want our church to have 100 of those guys that at any time can say, Pastor Jurgen, what do you need? You want to buy a $10 million building? Let's buy it.
Yeah.
That's a different level of giving. But we got to learn there's wisdom like Solomon had to multiply and to build wealth. And you've got some great information I believe that you could share with us today. I just want to give you some freedom to speak into building wealth, but I want the audience to understand the heart behind it so we can write that check.
It's a big question.
Yeah, I know it's broad. I'm sorry, but I wanted to give you some freedom, and we'll point it from there.
You know, everyone's situation's different, and that's where, for me, it's truly when you say about building wealth, it's for me, it's circling back, it's having conversation, find out what are your goals, what are your dreams, where are you trying to get. That's the start, and from there, and most people, it's like, I sell this thing, I sell a product. So everyone's coming at you trying to sell you something. For me, it's just like, I want to meet with people. I want to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish. Where are you trying to get? What are your dreams? What are those? And then from there, and for me, I love to network. I love to meet people. Yeah. And I don't care who they are, what they do. I want to meet people because I want to build my network, because oftentimes what someone does, one of my clients may need. And it's amazing how many times something, it's like, oh, guess what? I know someone that does that. Or I've got someone that it literally, I was having a conversation with someone, I don't know, about a month ago, and who's in the hotel industry of, I'm trying to think what her, but basically, getting clients for hotels and doing that. And one of the things she said, you know, God's put it on my heart that I should buy a hotel. I'm going to own a hotel one day. And we were talking a little bit about that. And I said, and it's not like there was a time thing, like I got to go buy a hotel tomorrow or something. I said, well, you know, maybe the way that works is maybe you start by, you know, partnering to bring your expertise of hotels. She's got a great niche in what she does, and being able to very high net worth boutique type hotels bring the luxury experience and things like that. I said, maybe you find someone to partner with, you bring your expertise and in exchange for that, you get equity in that hotel or something.
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
genius.
And literally later that day, I had a call with someone, and that someone's like, we were talking about their tax stuff and planning, and they're like, oh, and by the way, we're in the process of buying a hotel. Same day.
Wow.
Same day. I'm like, I just had this call with this person. I'm going to put you two in touch with each other.
Wow.
But it's just like, it's stuff like that. It's like, I don't care what, most people, it's like they want to meet with people that are going to make a difference in their business.
Yeah.
And that used to be my way. It's like, hey, I want to meet with attorneys, CPAs, whatever. And I was like, I want to meet everyone. I want to find out. I enjoy hearing what people are doing. And there's very rarely do I walk away from a meeting not being able to say, I've got someone I got to put you in touch with, or have you thought about this or that or whatever, regardless of if it impacts my business or not.
Yeah.
More times than not, it doesn't, but I don't care. It's just fun to, hey, you never know what comes out of this stuff. And, years down the road, people, it's like, oh, you remember we talked a few years ago.
You guys catching this? Because he's talking about the value of networking. We all hear that, but also like, guys, you never know what one conversation could lead to, and that connection, what it can do for your life. It's funny, Greg, as I climb the quote unquote ladder of success and wealth and get in rooms with people that I used to dream about being in rooms with, the more I realize the value of that. Man, it really is who you know.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these people I talk to, and I really look like when I actually hear people's stories and like how they became wealthy, I'm also like looking and they're like, okay, where's your break? Where'd the break come? Most often than not, that was through a relationship that gave the break.
Yeah.
That created the massive wealth that then from that they were able to multiply.
Right. And at the same time, you're not going to, in many cases, you don't just go from here to here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's taken me, I've been doing what I've been doing for 36 years in my business related to wealth and assets and that type of stuff and planning. And it wasn't, it's that time where you've got to build, you've got to grow, you've got to kind of level up and get to that. You don't just go from here to here. You've got to put the time in. And that's a big thing. You do have to put the time in, because 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if you would have said, hey, you're going to meet a couple of billionaires this week. And actually, I can be sitting down with a billionaire and I can handle their planning. I understand what their needs are. I understand. If you would have said that even a few years ago from the standpoint of the level of planning and capabilities, and God gives you what you need, and you grow into that. So it's amazing. That's one of the big things in my life is just in terms of I've been given. It's, you're tested. It's like, what do you do? You're tested with what you're given.
You're tested with what you're given. That's good.
And from there, you'll start to level up from there. Once you've proven you can.
And you're given in direct proportion to your capacity.
Yeah.
So what you have now is the capacity you have now. Then you're tested with that capacity and what you have. And from there, capacity increases, more comes, rinse and repeat.
Yeah, and some of that, it's not always about what you can do, but it's about in your network and how can you support that person or that family or whatever. It's not all about me.
Yeah.
It's about...
Well, actually, as you scale in anything, you actually learn it's a lot less about you and the team that you build around you. But Greg, there's different people listening to this podcast. There's so many different people, right? So you're going to have people listen to this podcast, people I'm connected with, like they're already millionaires. But you're also going to have the person that's maybe working the 9-to-5 job, or the person that has started a business in the last few years and they're still trying to get that off the ground. Let's start with the latter I just said there. Those that aren't millionaires, those that don't have big wealth, they're not like, hey, Greg, I got $5 million in the bank. What do I do with it? But more people that are still building wealth in their life. They're still working every day. They're in the rat race. How do they get out of the rat race? And I know you can't give financial advice, so I just want to say that.
No, I mean, everyone is so unique.
Yeah.
And this is where, what I find, honestly, it's that entrepreneurial spirit. It's going out there. You got to hustle. You got to do. And what I find, even people who, hey, I'm a 9-to-5 person, I'm a W-2 person or whatever, that's okay. At the same time, a lot of times I hear about those people, you know what, I got an idea. And they start that idea. And eventually you get to the point where they're like, look, I'm going to go with this. It's just, it's so unique to every individual, and understanding where they're trying to get and a lot of it just has to do with what's their experience, what are they trying to accomplish, How are they going to get there? Having a plan, basically, putting a plan in place to say, hey, what's it look like to get here? And there's a lot of faith too, but you still got to, like you say, you got to put in the time. You can't just say, I'm going to start this business not knowing anything about that business. You've got to put the time in, do the research, talk to the right people. Networking, who you know, that's a huge thing. Who do you know?
Yeah.
Who can help you? Who believes in you? Do you have the expertise? Especially if you've got the expertise. Sometimes it's someone just waiting for that break.
Yeah.
Or waiting for that, to.
And I think most people stop panning for digging for gold, right? Like that 3 feet from gold. I don't know if you've ever seen that. And it's like the guy have you ever heard that story about the guy that was digging for gold? So there was like this guy in the California gold rush, and he came out here, him and his family, and they invested everything they had, and they sold their business to come mine for gold, and they bought all this mining equipment, and they came out, and they had found some gold, and they thought they hit it rich, and the gold vein ran out. And they began to dig some more, and they didn't find gold. They began to dig some more. They didn't find gold. They began to dig some more. They didn't find gold. And the man and his family, like, we're done. We're giving up. We're selling everything. We're moving back.
Yeah.
And so they end up selling it to this guy, and he buys all the equipment for pennies on the dollar. And he goes in there with his family, and he says, keep digging right here. The vein ran out. There's another vein. And they hit another vein and became multimillionaires, and it's based on a true story.
Yeah.
And everyone talks about that, saying you were 3 feet from gold, because that's what they said. He was 3 feet from hitting that next vein when he gave up. And so what I heard you say was, no matter where you're at right now, you got to hustle with what you got.
Yeah.
But you got to have a plan, and you got to know where you want to go, and you got to continue to do that. Is that what you're saying?
That, and then as things come together, got to be smart with your money. And that's a lot of people. One of the things people don't realize is they see the very successful people. And yeah, there's the cases where someone inherited money or something like that. And oftentimes that leads to problems. But it's a lot of, especially the entrepreneurs, people are like, oh, they've got it so easy and they don't do anything or whatever. What they don't realize is those people were in the trenches. And many times they went broke a couple of times before they made it. And they don't realize the hustle and the work and what went behind. I've got clients that, now that they're on top, and people say, oh, they don't do anything. He comes into the office one day a week or whatever. They didn't see what that person went through 10 years ago or whatever, when they were, when they were down to nothing, just like you said, I got $100 in my wallet or whatever, when they were down to nothing. And those people, most of the time, those people put their time in. And a lot of people don't realize that or see that, and they say, oh, they got the fancy car and this, and they're jealous of that. And it's just like, they worked for that. And then the higher you move up in that's the other thing is, the wealthier you get, there are a lot of advantages. And what I mean by advantages is there's a lot of types of investing you can do. You need a higher net worth to do that type of stuff. And part of that is to diversify properly, where it's not going to impact you with, a lot of people, it's like they don't have enough to diversify properly or to be able to take the risk with certain types of investments. But the higher your net worth, you can spread things out, and you can take some more risk on, call it the long shots. I was sitting down with a client yesterday, or a person I'm talking to actually, about becoming a $20, $30 million guy, but he's got five different private equity investments that any one of them could pop tomorrow for anywhere from $10 to $100 million. Mm-hmm. And realistically, with those types of startup type things, probably 3 or 4 of those will fail, but that one will pop for a big amount. And that's what I see with a lot of people. Now, at the same time, you're talking about all that. What do you do? And that's one of the conversations is, how do you take chips off the table? How do you protect what you have from asset? This is where we get into the deeper conversations about asset protection, about charitable planning. How do you make a difference and leave and have an impact and leave a footprint?
Yeah.
You've got tax. One of the biggest things, obviously, tax reduction. And there's a lot of planning. That's probably one of the biggest things. People initially come thinking, oh, I'm paying way too much in taxes. But then we start talking about the other types of planning. It's, wow, I never thought about that, and I didn't realize that. And there's some big in legacy planning in terms of, hey, I want to take care of my kids, but I don't want to leave too much I don't want to corrupt them.
Yeah.
So how do we put guardrails around that? How do we test drive the kids? How do we do, there's some cool things you can do for legacy planning to protect the kids from themselves sometimes down the road.
Yeah.
So it's just, so wealth does bring other opportunities and other planning, but again, how do you get there? And a lot of it is, it's hard work. You just, a lot of people, and that's one of the things.
The answer nobody wants to hear.
Today's youth, a lot of today's youth, they want the easy. They want to be taken care of. They don't want to work.
Yeah.
They want it. You got to put the time in.
Yeah. Greg, that was really good. And I love that you talked about the hard work too, right? Because I'm a guy that comes from nothing. My dad's been in prison my entire life, raised by a single mom. I've overcome adversity after adversity after adversity. Not to let that be a crutch, because it's not.
Yeah.
I've taken ownership of my life. So I've been in the trenches since I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I meet guys like you and I'm like, I just want to get to the table with the chips to talk to a guy like Greg. And then when I get near a guy like Greg, he says, keep working hard. And I'm like, all right, roger that. I'll keep working hard. So for everyone listening to the podcast right now, I think a lot of us want wealth, but we don't know how to steward wealth. And in order to steward wealth, well, for one, you got to create the wealth to even have it, to be able to steward. And then from that process, I believe that you grow, that you become a better person, and that you get around guys like Greg Banner, and that you get wisdom around you and people that are experts at that, and that can really be your wise counsel of what to do with that and how to multiply that. So Greg, that was really good. I will say this though, if you were to go to a younger version of you in your 20s and you were to give that person advice to change even the course of your life then with the wisdom that you know now, what would you say to that 20-year-old?
One of the things when I teach, because I love to teach a lot, one of the most important things when I'm talking to people, I say WIIFM. What's in it for me? Understand, number one, educate yourself. Go out, learn, understand the basics of whatever it is you're trying to do. A lot of people, it's just like honestly, they're too trusting sometimes. And when I say what's in it for me, I don't care anyone you're working with trying to sell you anything. I don't care if it's investments. I don't care if it's real estate. I don't care if it's insurance. If it's an estate plan, something an attorney's trying to sell you. It's like, understand what it is you're buying or what they're trying to sell you. Understand the motivation and the motive for what they're selling you. Are they getting paid a commission, a fee, or whatever? Transparency. Understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and it's okay. And it may be something you need. It may be something, oftentimes it's like, hey, you do need that. And it's okay that they get paid a fee or a commission or whatever they're doing to do it. But understand what the motive is behind that. To make sure, because oftentimes most people have a box and it's like, here's what I can offer you. And, if you're a financial planner, most of the time, someone's going to try and sell you stocks and bonds or managing those assets. If you're an insurance person, everything you get, whether it's investments, it's going to be an insurance type product. If oftentimes we see it with attorneys, they specialize in one or two particular strategies, and every conversation leads back to one of those strategies. And I say that because oftentimes people come to me and it's like, Greg, I need one of these things. We got to go, one of these special trusts or something to save taxes or whatever. Such and such, I heard such and such did this and saved all this money in taxes. I'm like, slow down. Why do you want one of these things? Well, I want to do this, this, and this. Well, guess what? There's 4 other strategies that'll do that. It's just, let's understand the bigger picture of what you're trying to accomplish. And from there, we can step back and say, there's, what that particular strategy you were talking about, here's the pros to it, here's the cons to it. There's some other ways to do that. And the same thing, whether it be financing, investments, or whatever, it's understand the bigger picture of whoever you're working with, because I see it so many times. It's like people come and it's like, oh, I'm looking at all of their assets and it's like, what do you have that for? Or why do you have one of those? And it's just like, oh, well, and oftentimes people don't have a coordinated plan. It's like, well, this guy sold me this and this guy sold me that, and I've got stuff everywhere, and it's a mess. And that's one of the biggest things I do in working with my team and people. It's cleaning up messes and solving problems. And a lot of times it's things that people problems they don't even realize that they haven't had yet, but that are coming. Whether it's legal, whether it's tax, whether it's something else.
Wow.
So
that was gold. That was gold. That was so good. Greg, I mean, just even the concept of what's in it for me, because I think about the world and I love capitalism. I love our world and our economy in the United States of America. I love that every single person can become an entrepreneur today, that they can develop products and services or represent other products and services through their own entity or their own business and be able to offer that and solve problems. But also that creates this world of they're trying to make a livelihood for their family. We all are, right? We have products, we have services. We solve problems. You solve problems, I solve problems. We solve different problems. But at the same time, it's so easy. And I'm one of those guys in times I've probably bought into things without actually having the wisdom of like, hey, what is really in this for me? Like what is your motivation? Why do you want to sell me this? What is it actually for me? Understanding, are there better options? What are the pros? What are the cons? So that was really good because I just look at like even the people I know that have money and I'm like, I'm willing to bet the majority of them or us don't fully implement that strategy.
You'd be amazed at the number of people I talk to that a lot of them have no clue what they own. It's like, yeah, I bought this thing. I don't even know what it does. I bought it for this reason.
Sales guy was really good. Great presentation.
Yeah, I bought timber and whatever, or I bought this thing and I was all excited about it, and half the time that's what it is. I'm all excited about this. I gotta have it. I'm gonna miss out. A lot of people, it's like chasing the shiny coin.
Yeah.
Just recently, it's like I need to be buying some AI stocks. And I just say that because
AI is popular.
This is a big thing, and it had a big run. And I'm like, well, you may want to. Hey, they may be great, but at the same time, and I'm not making recommendations or anything. It's like, hey, is now the time to be buying them? I don't know. It depends on your time horizon, your risk tolerance, and all that. They've had a pretty big run up. It may not be the time. Or oftentimes, people, especially with individual things, I want to buy some ABC type stock because they've got such a great product or whatever. They can have the greatest product in the world, but until you really dig down and understand that company, and maybe they're way overvalued, and maybe it's not the time to buy them or something. It's like they may have a great product, but if it's going to take 50 years for them to, make money, or it's just, until you really dig down and understand what you're buying. And real estate's another thing. I'm a big real estate guy. I love real estate. And a lot of that is because real estate has tax benefits that no other assets have.
Right.
So it's a great asset, especially from the higher net worth. I mean, I tell people there's kind of this breaking point with half of my clients honestly don't own any stocks and bonds. They own real estate and private equity. And what I mean by that is what I see is the higher the net worth of the client, they get to a point where the problem with stocks and bonds is it's this roller coaster with the stock market, and it's something you can't control. I work with a lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs. Control's a big thing, but they also understand concentrated risk. They build businesses. Everything's tied up in that business, but they're comfortable with that risk because they can control. They know what dials to turn and adjust. If there's a problem with the business, okay, here's what I need to do to fix that.
Yeah.
Real estate's the same thing. So the clients get to the level of being able to start acquiring real estate, and especially it's like, okay, if I own a building, I know what the numbers are. I can see if there's a problem. It's like, okay, if I own an apartment complex, do we have an occupancy problem? Why? Was it COVID related? Do we have, is there a problem with, hey, we had a fire or something, we've got some units that are empty, or what's causing the problems? At least we can go in there and figure out when we know what the problem is. So we know what we need to do to fix the problem with a tangible piece of real estate or buying a business. A lot of my clients, a chunk of, like I said, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and as a financial planning background, my comment used to be, oh, well, when you sell your business, come to me and I'll build you this fancy stock and bond portfolio and get you, 5 or 6% a year and you'll live happily ever after. My comment to that is that's hogwash. And here's what really happens. You sell your business, and first of all, a lot of business owners, people who sell their business, they haven't thought through what they're going to do after they sell their business.
Yeah, they get lost.
And if you talk to a lot of business owners after the fact, they were very unhappy that they sold their business because they didn't understand what life was going to be like after they sold their business. You can only play so much golf or whatever. And most entrepreneurs, they want to stay in the game. So what I typically see, it's not, and it took getting kicked in the head a few times from helping some people sell businesses. Here, Greg, here's $10-20 million to invest. And a year later, all that money was gone. And I'm like, well, what happened to that money? It went into private real estate and private equity. And what I mean by private equity, and most of the time, it's like it went into their former competitors are now their best friends. And it's like, hey, you sold your business. Congratulations. Make an investment in my company. You have all this expertise and spent all this time. Take a board seat or whatever. Help me grow the business. You got a place you can come kick your feet up once a week or once a month or whatever and help grow this. You've got some equity in the business now and you'll have another pop. I see that. That's how a lot of my clients get their private equity. Like I was talking about, they'll do that with 5 or 10 different businesses, and some of them, nothing happens. But typically the ones they're more involved in, especially, all of a sudden you got a pop. There's 5 million, 50 million, whatever it is from that investment. At the same time, they need income, which is where the real estate component comes in. Oftentimes, again, tangible, not just some blind pool of real estate. It's usually, hey, let's do it. Let's work with a developer or partner to do in maybe a value add apartment complex, maybe an industrial, whatever it is, but it's a tangible piece of property. And you get all the tax benefits from that related to depreciation, cost segregations. There's a lot of cool things. And real estate has 1031, the ability to do tax deferred exchanges. So you're not taxed. So there's all these benefits to real estate. That's why the higher net worth and the family offices. So when I'm working with family offices that are $200 or $300 million, you look at their assets. Many of them don't even own stocks and bonds. They own real estate or private equity because they understand those assets. And oftentimes those assets do well in inflationary time periods, and their cash flow and tax advantage cash flow. So it's everyone's different. But what I see is as your net worth increases, you go with assets that you have more control over and you can diversify better. And then the bigger picture of that is you're also creating other issues with estate taxes and all the other, but you also have great opportunities from a charitable standpoint, things like that. So how do we mitigate the taxes on that? This is where it gets really fun. And I love what I do. It's sitting down and saying, okay, we've got $100 million estate or whatever. Here's all the pieces. How do we fix these? How do we mitigate how do we reduce or eliminate some of the income taxes? We're in California. California taxes everything if you let them tax everything. If you do active planning, sometimes there's things we can do to where you don't owe California taxes on some of those things. You can avoid state taxes on some parts of your portfolio or some parts of things sometimes. You can eliminate estate taxes are optional. And I mean that by with the right planning, people don't have to pay estate taxes. Estate taxes, when you're over, right now it's just under $13 million a person. When you're over that number, it's 40 cents on the dollar you're going to pay in taxes comes off the top. And people say, well, I'm never going to be at $13 million, $26 million per couple. The number, most of the people I talk to, they've got a problem. That's going to be an issue. Not to say that everyone I talk to is, because I talk to people that I love working with people even who have a small amount of money just to give them advice and guidance. But there's really cool planning that can, I'll leave it at that.
Greg, come on. I told you guys, Greg is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm soaking up some wisdom over here, Greg, even just thinking about my situation. That was so good. And, I had a friend tell me one time, he said, everyone talks about most millionaires have been made in real estate, and it's true. He said, but you know where the billionaires are made? Private equity, acquisitions, mergers. That's where billionaires are made. So it's interesting. And one thing I kind of understood why, but when you talked about the control aspect as an entrepreneur, I have 2 companies. I love being able to turn the dial. When there's a fire in my company, I know how to go in and put the fire out. Yeah. And often that fire actually turns into a building block to build more on the company because pressure reveals cracks. And once we know what the cracks are, we can fortify, we can build, we can scale from there. We have stronger foundation. I see that with investing in private equity and investing in real estate. So that's amazing. We're over time, so we got to wrap up here. I want to keep going, but I just want to say, Greg, thank you so much for coming on the show, for sharing your wisdom. And I love that we started the conversation with a posture of heart of what our relationship with God, what our relationship with our church has done for our lives, for your life. And then, we get to crack open the can a little bit and hear some of that amazing wisdom that you have around wealth and planning and all of that. But we always point it back to God because he gets all the credit. I mean, God made you perfect just the way you are. Your gifts, your talents, your ideas, that 1% you talked about, he gave that to you for a reason. Yeah. You're stewarding that. You're multiplying that. And from the bottom of my heart, Greg Banner, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. It's been great.
Awesome.